A 15-year-old girl vanishes with her high school teacher. She's gone for 38 days. So how did they finally find her? And what was really going on in that classroom? This is the shocking case of Elizabeth Thomas. Let's recap. It starts like a normal school day in Tennessee, but 15-year-old Elizabeth Thomas never comes home. She's a quiet student described as sweet and shy. No one imagines she'd run off with her own teacher. That teacher, Tad Cummins, a 50-year-old married man with daughters of his own and grandkids. He taught health science at her high school in Columbia, Tennessee. Police say he'd been grooming her for months. He told her he loved her. He gave her gifts. He even told her to call him daddy. But when the school starts asking questions, he panics and makes his move. So why her? Why was Elizabeth Thomas the one he targeted? Well, to understand that, you have to know what was going on in her life before she ever stepped foot into Tad Cummins' classroom. Elizabeth grew up in a chaotic, abusive home. Her mom was arrested for beating 5 of her 10 kids, including Elizabeth. The abuse was so bad, Elizabeth said she was scared to even eat because she didn't want to get yelled at. By the time she was 15, her mom was out of the picture and her dad was barely holding it together. Elizabeth, she was homeschooled for most of her life until she enrolled at Tad's high school as a freshman in 2015. She grew up in survival mode, playing caregiver, peacemaker, and trying to stay invisible all at the same time. Now that is the perfect storm for a predator, because predators like Tad, they look for girls who are isolated, girls who are insecure, girls who are used to not being protected. But he gave her attention. He told her she was mature, different from the other girls. He made her feel seen and special. And when she started to believe it, that's when he tightened the leash. He called her his person, told her he loved her, convinced her no one else ever would. To Elizabeth, that didn't feel creepy. It felt like safety, because when your whole life feels unstable, someone pretending to protect you can feel like love, even when it's not. Now, this didn't happen overnight. Tad Cummins spent nearly a year building control over Elizabeth Thomas. By the time they vanished, she was already emotionally trapped. Her dad says she became dependent on him. He gave her money, bought her a microwave so she could heat up food in his classroom. He'd even step in if she got in trouble. He made himself the one person she could rely on. Now, behind the scenes, things were getting darker. Tad would pick her up from her house in secret, and if she didn't go with him, he'd threaten her, said she'd get in trouble at school. He used her fears and twisted them to stay in control. Elizabeth told friends she felt like she was in over her head. She was scared of him, but she didn't know how to get out. She didn't want to tell them that they were meeting in secret in his classroom closet. That's where he would kiss her, touch her, regularly. And then came the threats. He told her if he couldn't be with her, he'd kill himself. And if she didn't go along with his plans, he'd hurt her family. Now that's not love, that's manipulation. Oh, even though she had doubts, even though she was scared, they kept meeting in secret every week until January 23, 2017. That's when a student saw them kissing in his classroom. Now, this picture was taken of the two of them just days before that. The next day, the student confronted him about it. In his excuse, he said he was just a father figure to her, that she was his best friend. But at that point, the truth was unraveling fast. The school launched an investigation, but get this, they let him keep teaching. They just told him to stay away from Elizabeth. 3 weeks later, when her father sent a letter complaining about it to the school board, Tad was suspended, but he didn't back off. Phone records show he and Elizabeth kept in contact, and during those calls, he filled her head with fear. He told her because of the kissing incident, Her college plans were ruined, that any career she had in mind was over, and the only way out was to leave everything and everyone behind and run away with him. That's when he started planning their escape. In the days leading up to the disappearance, he was doing his homework. Computer records show he searched. Can a car be tracked by police? Can a teenager get married? He was plotting every step. He borrowed cash from someone. He even filled a prescription for Cialis, a drug used to treat erectile dysfunction. So yeah, he wasn't planning a road trip. He was planning a honeymoon with a 15-year-old girl. On March 13, 2017, Tad made his move. He picked her up from a restaurant parking lot around 8 a.m., just like he planned, and they vanished. Earlier that morning, Elizabeth told her sister she'd be hanging out with a female friend that day, but she gave a warning. If I'm not home by 6, call the police. Meanwhile, Tad Cummins was already on the move. He'd emptied his lockbox, taking the $4,500 in cash and 2 handguns. Before leaving, he wrote a note to his wife, said he was going to Virginia Beach to clear his head, and begged her not to call the police. By early afternoon, Elizabeth's dad realized something was wrong. He found out that friend had actually dropped her off at a Shoney's parking lot that morning. And here's where it gets even more disturbing. Right before she disappeared, Elizabeth changed one of her social media bios to say wife, along with a ring emoji. That wasn't her idea. Tad convinced her to do it, told her that they were starting a new life together, that they were meant to be. So while the country searched for her, his actual wife of 31 years went on TV pleading for him to come home.
Tad, this is not you. This is not who you are. We can help you get through this. No matter how far you've gone or what's happening right now, God's grace is sufficient for you, and He wants you to come home. Your family wants their Poppy back. Please do the right thing and turn yourself into the police and bring Beth home.
But he didn't. He kept running across 9 states with a child and a head start. For 38 days, the country watched and waited. Her face was everywhere, but no one knew where they were. Tad had told his family he was just mentoring Elizabeth. He even brought her to worship services with them. He was super involved at church, leading youth groups, teaching Sunday school. On the outside, he looked like a stand-up guy. Before he ever stepped into a classroom, Tad worked in healthcare. He was a respiratory therapy supervisor and then a tech at a medical equipment company. But what he really wanted, to teach. He called it his dream second career. And in 2011, he made it happen at a school in Columbia, Tennessee. 4 years later, Elizabeth Thomas walks into his classroom. The last confirmed sighting of them, before everything went quiet, was at a Walmart in Oklahoma City. That was on March 15th, just 2 days after they vanished. They were already nearly 700 miles away from Tennessee. From there, they headed to Colorado, where they started using fake names, John and Joanne Castro. As Mr. and Mrs. Castro, they made their way to California. At one point, Tad bought a kayak. He had this wild idea they'd paddle across the border into Mexico. Yeah, that plan didn't exactly work out. So they pivoted again, this time to Northern California, where they found a place called Black Bear Ranch, a clothing-optional commune way off the grid. It might have been the perfect place to hide. No phones, no news, no one really asking questions. But even there, they didn't fit in. Elizabeth and Tad were asked to leave not long after they got there, not because anyone recognized them, but because, quote, the chemistry wasn't right. They just didn't vibe with the other residents. So once again, they were back on the run. They went about 20 miles further north and rented a remote cabin. But this wasn't some cozy hideout. It was a rough, 4-walled shack. No running water, no electricity, no heat. He told the landlord they were from Colorado, said Elizabeth was 24 and he was in his 30s. Okay, Ted, calm down. He claimed they were just a couple going through hard times. Well, the landlord bought it at first. He let them do odd jobs around the property in exchange for food. But not long into their stay, he saw their faces on the news. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't just some down-on-the-luck couple. This was the Amber Alert case everyone was talking about. And in the early morning hours of April 20th, federal agents stormed the cabin. Tad didn't fight it. Elizabeth was found hiding behind a curtain, scared, thin, and finally free. Tad was hit with multiple charges, including kidnapping and transporting a minor across state lines for sex. He eventually pleaded guilty, and in 2019, he was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. He cried in court, apologized to Elizabeth and her family, but the damage was already done. As for Elizabeth, she's doing her best to rebuild her life. She's now married with a child and trying to move on. She's spoken out publicly, saying she was manipulated, scared, and ashamed, but she's no longer hiding. In 2023, Lifetime made a movie about her experience called Abducted by My Teacher. And these days, she's using her voice to raise awareness about predators who hide in plain sight and how easy it is for vulnerable kids to get caught in their web. Do you think that this could have been prevented if the school had taken action sooner? Or was Elizabeth already too deep under his control by the time anyone noticed? Let's talk about it. And if you like getting all the crime in half the time, I'm Amy. Chris and I are here 3 times a week with new recaps. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Until next time, take care.